Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst with Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold, silver, and copper exploration today. We will hear from Simon Dykowski, President and CEO of Aztec Minerals Corp. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook, then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Aztec Minerals webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined in the corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, aztecminerals.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. And please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Aztec. So we have Aztec presenting today. The company is blessed with two strong projects where they have had successful drilling, a gold-copper project in Mexico and a gold-silver project in Arizona. With that, I now turn it over to Simon to update our audience on the company.
Hey, Timothy, thanks for the introduction and the opportunity to come onto the Red Cloud webinar and go through recent events at Aztec, in particular, our return to Tombstone. So we're excited to announce last week to the market that we have approved a 2024 exploration plan with our Tombstone joint venture partners. And of course, we'll touch on Cervantes today as well, which is one of our two flagships properties down in Sonora State in eastern Sonora State in Mexico. We're active down there as well. So good opportunity to update investors and potential investors and stakeholders on both of our properties over the plans for the upcoming months here. We've covered off the cautionary statement, so thank you very much for that. I won't repeat any of this legal information. So as a quick overview of the company, just to remind investors on our strategy here. So we're an exploration company. We're focused on the discovery of large gold and silver and polymetallic mineral deposits in what we consider to be world-class mining jurisdictions. Obviously, we consider North America to be the host of these jurisdictions, but particularly drilling down into Arizona ranks very highly now on the Fraser Institute list of mining jurisdictions, and particularly when the property is situated on private land, as the Tombstone property is. So the Tombstone property is a combination of patented mining claims. So this is claims where our joint venture owns the surface and the mineral rights. So this is a huge permitting advantage, both in the exploration phase, but potentially also for the development phase as well. And in eastern Sonora, Mexico, obviously, Mexico has had some negative headlines on it recently in terms of some mining law reforms, but we point out that it does, as a country, have a very, very rich history of mining, particularly silver mining. And Sonora State, where we're located in, has a very significant gold component to its mining operations. And we're located favorably in eastern Sonora at the Cervantes property, just a stone's throw, 40 kilometers away from Alamos Gold's Mulatos mine. Bringing me to a key point on our corporate overview here, Alamos Gold being our largest shareholder at this moment. So they made a strategic investment into Aztec shares back in 2022, a couple of years back, on some discovery hole drilling that we made at that time. So a great shareholder to have. Second point on our overview here is management, the board. So we have an experienced board and management with a proven track record of value creation really throughout the whole cycle in the mineral exploration business, from discovery, development, and all the way through to production. mention our two properties. We hold a 75% joint venture interest in Tombstone. This property contains past producing open pit heap leach oxide gold silver operation operated primarily in the 1980s. And further back beyond that time period, pre-1950, there are several high-grade underground mines located underneath this property. Cervantes has already mentioned, it's now 100% owned by Aztec, and it's near multiple mines and projects under developments in eastern Sonora State in Mexico. We're currently refocusing on the emerging gold silver discovery that we've made at the Tombstone, Arizona property. Over the past 3 years, we've drilled shallow and broad gold and silver oxide discoveries along the strike length of the historic open pit. And now we're expanding it in the lateral directions, particularly to the west. I'll be talking about the west zone a lot during today's presentation. So, I'd encourage investors to note that. Recent drill highlights include 32 meters of 6.3 grams per ton gold equivalent. Also, another hole 65.5 meters at 3.4 grams gold equivalent. And a little bit deeper down in our drilling, we started to tag some of the bonanza grade silver that the district has been historically known for, with an intersection last year of 1.5 meters of 3,477 grams per ton silver within a zone of 7.6 meters averaging 734 grams per ton silver. We also have a very, very compelling a blue sky upside scenario at Tombstone, and this is in the form of a CRD carbonate replacement deposit style of a deeper sulfide potential silver lead zinc in the Taylor Hermosa style of discovery model. We have developed this target with indications from historic drilling as well as deep geophysics and geology that we have compiled over the past few years. This target is yet to be drilled, represents pure blue sky upside for us. And just really quickly on Cervantes and Sonora, we've just wrapped up an expansion of a shallow gold system that we've drilled, really situated on top of a much larger gold, copper, porphyry target. We've now drilled approximately 12,000 meters on that property over 3 campaigns, the last one just being reported over the first quarter. We're now pausing drilling for the rainy season over the summer, but we're doing a lot of work there in terms of data analysis and working up our next round of expansion drill targets, which have already been permitted, but will be refined over the coming months ahead of the next drill program there. And we have a 6-kilometer structural trend of multiple geologically similar gold and copper exploration targets on that property. Again, just on our strategy, we're in the business of discovery. Why? So, why look for large discoveries? Major mining companies, they need to acquire large ore deposits to sustain their development and their cash flows. And over recent decades, they've relied more and more on M&A to replace these reserves. So we're trying to position Aztec as a company that has an expertise in discovery, both through the assets and through the team and the strategy. Junior companies now dominate this exploration sector, and they have the expertise, as our team does, in making these new discoveries. And when you make a new discovery and the market heats up for the overall commodity, you tend to see major companies pay large premiums to make acquisitions of the successful juniors, and that can create maximum shareholder value. We've already talked about why we like North America, particularly Arizona and Sonora, and why should investors consider Aztec? Well, we're well positioned. We're planning accretive drilling in 2024. We believe we have large-scale ounce potential across both of the projects, and we believe we have significant leverage to the gold and silver price, which has been recently breaking out to new highs in the case of gold, and getting back on track in the case of silver. We have a prolific past-producing silver district in Tombstone. Again, with large-scale ounce potential, we have the deep CRD target. And we have the private land situation there, and it's Cervantes. Gold, copper, porphyry potential with the gold system already proven and growing near surface. And last but not least, look, the valuation we think is attractive. We're sitting currently at about a $25 million market cap. 50% of our shares are well held. And why now? Well, we think the precious metal cycle is just getting started. Majors are soon to be hungry for deals, and the base metals tend to follow the precious metals when they break out. A little bit on our team, this is very important. Myself, I come from a capital markets background. The rest of the team, however, are experienced geologists through all life cycle, throughout the entire life cycle of the industry. Our VPX, based in the U.S., very well-known geologist, former exploration manager at Southern Peru Copper. He's had his hand in the discovery and evaluation of more than 30 million ounces of gold and 25 million tons of copper, with a focus in the Americas, Nevada, Mexico, Colorado, and Peru, and I believe a lot of work in Colombia as well. Mark Rebliati is the chairman of our technical board, and he's a board director of the company. He's a renowned geologist, famous for his expertise in a number of porphyry discoveries made for the Hunter Dickinson Group. He's recently been inducted to the Mining Hall of Fame. Pat Veris, another very well-known geologist out of Vancouver, who's played a key role in some very large discoveries and then M&A exits for companies that he's been involved in. So those are really the key technical people involved at the top of our org chart. Cap structure, just really quickly here, share price chart, you can see that we are coming out of the doldrums of the last few years after the last real run up in the gold and silver price, which coincided with a nice run up in our share price. We went all the way from 5 cents to almost 70 back in 2020 when gold and silver came roaring back to life. We have been consolidating over the past 3 years, have managed to keep a good lid on our share structure. However, having engaged now in 6 drill programs, 3 on each property, 109 million out, 25 million market cap. Both of these properties are now post-discovery, still with discovery upside, pre-resource, with a lot of good intangibles at both. We're cheap compared to our peers still. We think there's a lot of room to make up here with both just against our peers and also with the market for gold and silver picking up and drawing in more eyeballs from the generalist audience over the coming hopefully over the coming months and quarters and years. Notable shareholders on the top of the list, you have Alamos Gold, and then a number of gold-focused funds and institutions that round out our top 6 investors. So we're getting some good institutional interest now, some earlier stage institutional investors that come in strategically, usually timed with the beginning of a new cycle. Our property locations, both on one map slide. So in Tombstone, we're in southeastern Arizona, as you can see, about 40 miles, 60 kilometers from Taylor Hermosa. And then the Cervantes property on the same map slide. This is in eastern Sonora, and as mentioned, surrounded by some very well-known Canadian-owned and operated open pit heap leach gold operations and development projects, including San Antonio, Santana, Mulatos, and La India. So great location for both of our properties. Zooming in a little bit on Tombstone, you can see here that we're actually within a world-class porphyry district, which does host some CRD deposits as well. Obviously, the massive discovery was made in 2015 by Arizona Mining at Hermosa, now known as the Taylor deposit. This was acquired by South 32 for $1.8 billion in 2018, all cash takeover. And South 32 has just announced that they are moving this forward to development. So they're investing around another $2 billion into making this mine a reality. So that's a great neighbor for us. And we believe, a very similar geological setting to potentially make another discovery like they did. But we are at this moment focused in on expanding our open pit, our shallow gold and silver oxide discovery. And what we're looking at here in the yellow outline is the outline of this 1980s era pit, known as the contention open pit. And this is situated right on top of about 1,000 feet, 250 to 300 meters of underground mine workings, where prior to the open pit mining period back in the turn of the last century, so between about 1880 to 1930, there was production from dozens of underground silver mines with gold as well. And the height of this activity was in 1915, and it ceased when the pumping operation, the dewatering operation, ran into some challenges. And for us, what that means is that we think there's a lot of high-grade silver upside at depth, just a little bit below this open pit, which we've been drilling in. And our first indication of that through the drill bit was encountered last April when we drilled that very interesting intersection of 1.5 meters, averaging 3,477 grams per ton silver. So I'll dive a little bit more into our open pit oxide target, and here's an ortho topo view of what the pit looks like. So it's about 1 kilometer long, and this is where we've drilled now about 51 holes. And why are we targeting this first? So we've been focusing our drilling on confirming this extensive and shallow oxidized gold silver mineralization below and around the pit. Why? Well, because the typical open pit heap leach mine in the Western US runs an average grade of about 0.4 to 0.6. So as we'll see in a subsequent slide, our drill results over the past 3 years have been much higher in comparison. The past producing open pit mine operated up until the late 80s with much lower precious metal pricing and good recoveries with only minor crushing. And we have indications of further high grade mineralization. And this is evidenced by both grab samples in the pit in the walls of up to 23.5 grams gold and over 3,000 grams silver. That's just in grab samples. And now we can see them in our drill data where we have now hit bonanza grade silver just a little bit deeper in our drilling. And we've now identified through our recent work new potential of widening this zone all the way out to the west and potentially into the sill zone and hopefully into the east target. So that is the focus of Aztec's exploration program over the next few months, is a big surface program to expound on these targets and to get them to the drill ready stage, where we hope to continue stepping out from the pattern that we've already drilled that we're looking at here, denoted by these red drill collars and the shaded magenta area, which is the mineralized zone that we've expanded and proven out to date, which has indicated to us that the mineralization does extend not only from the north end of the pit, but all the way down to the south end, over 900 meters of strike, with no indication that it ends at the bottom of the pit, where we're just simply constrained by what we've drilled so far, open in all directions. And the recent drilling has successfully expanded the volume of known shallow gold silver mineralization and is now driving us to expand further abroad, particularly to the west side. And this is an area that we recently acquired after the last round of drilling that was undertaken last year, about a year ago. And we're now diving into the data there, finding some really interesting indications that we think the pit might be able to be widened quite significantly, obviously with further drilling, which will come a little bit later this year. Just to give a little bit of a color on the existing drilling, we've hit some fantastic results, and I just highlight these drill cross sections to show how shallow this mineralization is. So we're looking at mineralization picking up about 20 to 30 meters from the bottom of the pit floor, and increasing to some very compelling grades just below the bottom of the pit. So I'll use this whiteboard tool here just to draw your attention to this hole here. 2322. Now this hole averaged 65.5 meters, just shy of 3.4 grams gold equivalent. But notice how it bottomed in just over 7 meters of 22 grams gold equivalent. This hole caved in bad ground. So this wasn't a hole that was stopped due to poor mineralization. It was the drill gave up on us, and it forms a very compelling target to continue drilling in our next program and see if that grade picks up and continues. And we have no reason to suggest that it doesn't at this point. So just to give a bit of a flavor of the grade potential here, and to put it in the context of the open pit concept. I mean, we're talking about grades that would get investors typically excited if you were looking at deep drilling in an underground scenario. And we have this located just about 20 to 30 meters below the bottom of the existing pit. So it's super shallow. It's all in oxides, and we think it continues on at depth. So when we bring in a more suitable drill in the next round of drilling, a little bit more power, use a little bit more casing, we'll be able to go back in and drill through and beyond some of these targets that we've already hit. Looking at the length of this zone, so this is a longitudinal section starting on the right-hand side here, going from north to south. It's 900 meters. And you'll see a little bit of what I was alluding to on the previous slide, where you can see a lot of these holes really just stopped at the water table. And that was a limitation of the drill that we were using. With reverse circulation or RC drilling, when you get moisture in the mix, it can cause some problems with caving. And these are problems that are not insurmountable by any means. They just require a little bit more planning and the right equipment. So we're addressing these ahead of our next round of drilling. So we'll be able to get deeper through some of these targets and through that dotted dashed blue line, which shows the average water table at about 200 meters depth. So quite a ways down, but as you get to that water table, that is where you're starting to see some of the silver numbers pick up and form the basis of the famous Tombstone Silver District. Looking at our highlight reel of results over our past round of drilling, you can see here very, very good results in our view in the bottom of the pit in the shallow environment. And I'll highlight here, so this is a non-43101 compliant metric, but I think it's helpful to compare drill results as grade thickness. So, simply grade times width, just to compare for a loose kind of look between projects. So we have, out of our 51 hole database, and just to be very clear, cannot be construed as gross metal value and is not in any way, shape, or form to be representative of any resource, because we don't have one. But simply looking at the grade times the width of these zones, we have 10 holes that exceed 100 meters, gram meters in grade thickness, and 4 over 200. Now I'll show you on the next slide where they're situated. And I want to be clear that these are quite widely disseminated throughout the pit. So this is a well dispersed system where there's a good volume of well mineralized material up and down the pit, not just constrained to one zone. So you can see that here we've pulled out the top 5 holes to show you where they are. So they're in the north, to the west, to the east, in the center, and to the south. So there's a big zone there that carries grade, and we think that it might extend out to the west side into the sill targets, but we're just getting our feet on the ground over the coming weeks to go and do a unified surface mapping sampling program, tidy up our modeling, and really prove out these targets before we go and risk shareholder dollars on drilling this. But we are looking to develop drill targets over the coming weeks. And it's, I think, a really great time in the market to be looking at shallow oxidized gold silver targets, with the potential to expand an already known and compelling mineralized system on private land in a past producing open pit, heap leach, brownfields environment. We believe, comparatively a lot less risky than other exploration projects that might be located on less favorable claims in other states and territories and provinces. So we're thrilled to be working down here, and as Timothy said, we're really blessed to have been given an opportunity to explore in this district, because there's so many intangibles here that we're excited about. Everything's there, in terms of power, water, skilled workforce, friendly neighbors, a town that's supportive of mining, etc. It's a great place to be working, and I think we should be getting a lot more eyeballs as we transition from this ground exploration stage to the drilling program later this year as it's planned. And just a little bit on this slide to conceptualize what I was talking about with the open pit sitting on top of the underground working. So they were really going down 1,000 feet back in 1910 to 15, and what they were targeting was enriched grades of silver. So we got our first real taste of that last year with hole 1 that got down pretty much to the water table and hit the high grade of silver. But we think there's a lot more upside in drilling some of these other targets a little bit deeper below that water table and getting into those the tops of the limestone beds beneath the Bisbee group sediments. Not to get overly technical here, but that's the very prospective area for starting to get into the sulfide mineralization. And that leads me now to, the deeper target here, the CRD target that, the first round of drilling this year won't be getting as deep as we'd like to get into the CRD target, but when we get there, this is what can happen. This is just a representation of what Arizona Mining did over their kind of 3-year discovery period, all the way through from discovery to buyout. When you hit a big CRD system in southeastern Arizona, good things can happen to the shareholders. So that's a great comp for us. But, just talking about our proximity closeology, I mean, obviously that's not enough to go and consider this a CRD target, but why do we think it is a compelling CRD target, you might ask? And the reason for that is there is some historic drilling underneath our past producing shallow pit. Now, all of this was done by previous operators. We have not been able to fully verify these results, and we're not relying on them in any NI 43-101 compliance sense. But we have found that Santa Fe Mining in 1989 drilled a hole that they reported to be 7 meters of 9.1% lead zinc, 0.6% copper, 32 grams of silver. And all of this drilling was done underneath the north end of the pit. There's been no drilling that we're aware of under the center part of the pit where we found the best precious metal grade. So we think this is a really compelling target, whereas you transition from the sediments where you have the veins and the mantos hosting the oxide gold silver. When you transition into the limestone bed, this is where you can see the sulfides replacing the mineralizing system there. So again, we have some great drill numbers here from previous operators, constrained really to one particular area north of the pit. And what we have done to supplement that is run deep geophysics at the same horizon of that drilling. So these intersections, I'll flip back, where it's 600 meters downhole, so about 500 to 600 meters in vertical depth, and they were constrained to the north end of the pit here, where where I'll draw a line. So that whole T8 intersection was about here, where I'm drawing the circle and line. And what we've done is run deep geophysics over the whole property, and it found at the 500 to 600 meter horizon, we have two giant conductive bodies, just south of where that historic drill intersection is. So these need to be drill tested eventually, and we think it's a very compelling target for those combination of factors: regional geology, similarities to Taylor Hermosa, existing drill data to the north, geophysical anomalies to the south and center, and the lack of drilling in those areas. And of course, this is where really our current shallow drilling has encountered the highest grades of gold and silver. So there's something going on driving that beneath here, and I'm trying to do a little doodle to show, but that is a very, very compelling target for us that we are working up in conjunction with our shallow drilling program. So in summary, at Tombstone, it's a 75-25 JV that we operate. Our partners contribute their pro rata of the exploration costs and maintenance costs of the property. It's a well-located property, mostly on patented claims. So everything that I showed you in terms of targets is on patented claims. We have permitted an aggregate operation on site, which is key to explain to investors that the town is mining friendly. We employ several people from the town right now on the aggregate business, providing some modest cash flow to us that helps cover some of our costs. There's road access right onto all of our targets. We have great infrastructure nearby. It's a historic mining town. We have full services, including power and water. The historic silver district produced 32 million ounces of silver and 250,000 ounces of gold between 1880 and 1940 from oxidized mantos and veins, and as well as from small CRD deposits. Our recent drilling has intersected extensive gold silver mineralization over the 900 meter length of the pit, over 250 meters in depth from this north trending contention pit. The contention underground workings go down 1,000 feet in depth, or 300 meters from the late 1800s. And, overall, it's a target-rich environment with a combination of shallow targets transitioning to deeper targets. And we think with a little bit more drilling investment, we can potentially make this a lot bigger. And the timing is right for this sort of a property. So we've announced the program has been approved. It's underway, or it will be underway over the coming weeks. We should have plenty of news flow coming from it over the coming weeks, and building into a drill program, subject, of course, to the results, market conditions, and financing to make it happen. So it's an exciting time to be looking at Tombstone. we'll be down there next week. I'll be down there next week with some investors on a site visit, and we expect to have a lot more to talk about this through the rest of April, May, June, July, and hopefully through the rest of the year. So that's Tombstone. But as Timothy mentioned, it's a 2-asset company, and maybe I'll spend just 3 to 4 minutes going through Cervantes. And this is our second flagship, 100% owned now. Again, nestled in between, very well-known projects owned by Canadian companies. We have 11 separate targets on this property, and we've really only had the chance to drill test one of them with any significance, and that's the California target. We have had a couple holes on California North and Jasper and Purísima, and those are all yielding very interesting results, but really, really early still, even though we've done 12,000 meters of drilling on this property. And zooming into this 12,000 meters of drilling, we've now drilled off a ridge top of about a kilometer in strike and an area now of about 1,000 meters east-west with depth down to about 265 meters of discontinuous mineralization, but 170 meters of continuous mineralization vertically. And big program just finished. We just finished our 3A program, 1,600 meters of a planned and permitted 4,200 meter program, which forms the basis for our next round of exploration here. Looking just on the exploration potential, our best results of the last program were at hole 34, and this is opening up a huge new area for us here, coincident with a magnetic low off to the northwest of this California zone ridge structure. What we're looking at here is quite a large gold in soil anomaly that basically averages almost a square kilometer here, and it has formed really the bones of where we are, where we've been drilling and where we plan to continue expanding. So we haven't even yet covered off that whole anomaly at surface, but we've got a good start to it. Just zooming in a little bit on hole 34, you can see that coming off the ridgeline, we're now starting to hit some sulfide mineralization towards the bottom of the hole, where we hit 34 meters of about 1 gram of gold, and even a high-grade intersection of about 1.5 meters of nearly 14 grams per ton gold. Lost this hole early, unfortunately, but forms the basis to keep drilling. Again, our highlight reel here, great results in that open pit oxidized theme. Highlight holes, 137 meters averaging 1.5 grams gold, 165 meters 1 gram, and the rest of the list is very compelling as well. We're out right now. What we're working on is some preliminary modeling, looking at how we can expand not only the California zone, but integrate it with some of the abroad targets, including California North and Jasper. So that's underway at the desktop level. In terms of open pit heap leach potential, we think it's compelling here. We've run now 2 preliminary metallurgical tests, and we can see the bottle rolls indicate some good recoveries for the oxide groups for gold, and as well, even in the mixed groups, the transitional groups, and in the sulfides, you're getting decent recoveries in a short time period. So a little bit more work to be done here, but no red flags on the metallurgy. So in summary, Cervantes right now is seeing desktop study modeling. We'll hopefully get back to the field here in the 3rd or 4th quarter. It's a large property, well located within an established mining belt in eastern Sonora, Mexico. Good road access. It's all privately owned surface, where we have agreements in place with the owners to access the property. We have water wells on site. Multiple prospective mineralized zones, all related to high-level porphyries and breccias along a 6-kilometer structural corridor. We have targeted really the most obvious target to date. That's the 900 by 600 meter gold and soil anomaly, averaging almost a half gram or 0.44 grams per ton gold. We have good targets based off geophysics, extensive outcrop mapping and sampling, and now, of course, we have a 12,000 meter drill hole database in which almost every single hole hit appreciable widths of gold mineralization in what we think is a very high level porphyry system sitting potentially on top of a system that transitions to more of a copper-rich one. So we think it's wide open to continue expanding and look forward to getting back to work here. So in summary, what's Aztec been up to really over the last 2 years? So we have made a big discovery at Cervantes and welcomed Alamos Gold as a large and strategic shareholder in 2022. We then consolidated the remaining ownership interest in the properties in Cervantes, so we now own 100%. At Tombstone, we completed a successful drill program last year, and we're now getting ready to generate the expansion drill targets, again, focused on the shallow gold silver oxide zone, expanding to the west, east, and into the sill target, and integrating that target with our deeper CRD style target. At Cervantes, just finished up a phase 3A drill program and now integrating those results into our modeling and planning to get back into the field a bit later this year and then hopefully continue drilling, noting that that's expansionary drilling has already been permitted. So in sum, why Aztec Minerals? So first and foremost, an experienced management and board that has done this before with a successful track record of discovering the ore bodies, operating the mines, and selling the companies. The valuation's attractive. It's about a 25 million market cap, well held, with insiders owning about 14%, a closely held group beyond that of about 35%. So in total, about 50% of the shares are within 10 or 12 phone calls, and an investment by by a gold company that is been doing very well. Needless to say, they're I think about an $8 billion market cap now. We have 2 properties, both post-discovery, pre-resource, and we believe wide open to expand. And we have these compelling upside blue sky targets at both, going beyond the sort of the shallow expansion potential in the copper porphyry system potential at Cervantes, and as well as with the CRD target at Tombstone. So with that, I think I've kind of buzzed through the update, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Simon, for the very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of this webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions. One kind of overarching, at what stage might you consider taking on a strategic partner, and particularly maybe for Cervantes, if you could focus on Tombstone instead?
Yeah, good question. So, let me answer it this way. Our drill program cost there was approximately $400,000, 1,600 meters. And the expansion plan that we think can really prove out the shallow potential to get revalued is about double that. So it's about less than double that. It's about 2,800 meters. So you're looking at a budget of maybe, comparative to our last spending of about $600,000 to $700,000 on the next phase of drilling. So that I think that's a little bit premature to be talking about bringing in a partner for that magnitude of drilling and dilution. So we would really like to get to a resource stage first, and we're not going to pursue the resource until we've actually exhausted the expansion potential at Cervantes on the gold zone. So, I mean, to answer that question, it's too early, and typically you wouldn't bring a partner on until the costs of the logical next stage to get re-rating, are too dilutive to the existing shareholders. And in our view, that's not the case yet.
Great. Now, looking at your drilling at Tombstone, we had a couple of questions. One, you had mentioned the water table and RC drilling and so on. Will it be expensive to drill through the water table?
It'll be more expensive than the previous RC drilling, but not as expensive as the previous core drilling. So it's somewhat in the middle. And it's really just dependent on how much casing we need to use to get through the water table. So not every hole is going to require casing all the way down. Some will, some won't. So it'll land somewhere in the middle. So, we're budgeting maybe about 25 to 30% more cost compared to the conventional RC drilling.
Okay. And then you had mentioned that likely this drill program won't quite reach deep enough, but why aren't you drilling, targeting the deeper CRD target, or at what stage would you look to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I should be clear, this is a concept for the year. What we've disclosed to the market and all that we've really approved to do over the next few weeks is generate the targets with the surface program. So we very well might feel compelled to drill the deep targets later this year, subject to the results of our modeling, our current surface efforts, and of course the funding environment. Those holes are a little bit more expensive to drill. So there's too many, I'd say, unknown variables at this point to commit one way or the other. But based on our previous experience, there still is, I think, very significant re-rating potential for us, just on expanding on the known zone that we have focused in on. So can't really give you a definitive answer today whether they'll be drilled this year or not. They might not. We'll find out over the coming weeks and months.
Okay. Now we did have one on looking on the financing side of things, or a couple more questions on that side of things. So you had just completed a financing in February. How far will that last you with your current plans?
So that covers all of our plans for now. It doesn't cover a huge amount of drilling. So we will address the funding situation for a larger drill program at the right time, and the right time is not yet, because we still have to actually conduct our our next sort of 60 days of surface work, modeling, etc. So that we're fully covered. We just raised 1.1 million back in February. I think that closed on Feb 16th. So we're good for now to get to these targets, and then we'll see how they get funded going forward.
Okay, great. And another one on the financing side of things, a little different from asking about a partner, but kind of similar. But royalty and streaming companies have been making investments in earlier stage projects, pre-resource projects. Is that something that you would consider?
Yeah, it's not something that we're considering right now. We just think that it's too early. We're not, we're still. I want to stress this. We're still really at the discovery stage. It's premature to be looking at selling royalties on these properties. I should mention, there is a small royalty on Cervantes, 0.5%, to the benefit of our former partner. But at this point, it's premature to even consider that, and we're focused on discovering before we get into any sort of economic study.
Okay, great. Now, looking on the geologic side, a bit, although I know you're not a geologist by background, Simon, but you have picked up quite a bit working in the industry. How does the structure and geology and so on at Cervantes compare with other surrounding heap leach projects, of which there are many in northwestern Mexico?
Yeah, so we have a conceptual porphyry style of mineralization at Cervantes. So that is similar to, I believe, the Santana property, where they have been developing an open pit oxide gold operation in the high levels of what is potentially a deeper porphyry system there. In terms of what we're seeing in our overall geology, on our map, you can see there's these 11 targets circled. So that's where we actually have outcropping porphyry stock that does run some interesting grade of copper and gold. Of course, we haven't yet had the chance to drill deeper into that system, but I would say for the gold system, where we've spent a lot of money and time drilling, you could look at that Santana project as potentially a loose comp. And I think for them, they haven't also yet had the opportunity to drill too much deeper there. I follow that one loosely. Great operators, great team, but I think they're sort of the same mindset of working on the gold system first, and then, I mean, obviously they're an operating company and a development company, but they're being strategic about drilling deeper, I think, at this point, as we are.
Okay, great. Now, we did have a couple of questions. Obviously, it's pre-resource here, so and obviously not economic studies yet. But what would you say is the approximate breakdown of metals at your projects by value? Are is it dominantly gold at each? What percentage would copper or silver play?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've done this exercise a few times, and it obviously varies with the commodity price day to day. But in terms of Tombstone, so it's funny, it's a silver district, but at today's commodity price, you're getting about 70, sometimes 80% of the value from gold. Just looking apples to apples. So it's more gold weighted with a silver dollar kick. But of course, that could all change as we drill a little bit deeper into these higher grade silver structures. So it's a nice split, but more weighted towards gold at this point. And I would say at Cervantes, given what we've proven so far, it's pretty much all gold with an unknown copper upside. So 100% gold exposure to Cervantes to date. 70 to 80% at Tombstone with very compelling silver upside there. That's a little bit further along than I'd say the copper exposure at Cervantes.
Great. And maybe a couple of questions that are kind of on a different angle. Obviously, a hot topic is always politics in some ways, but particularly Mexico with the mining industry, a rich history of mining, but the current administration hasn't exactly been pro-mining. What are your thoughts on the political situation there, and has that affected your operations or your plans there?
Great question. So let me start with the second half of the question. So it has not affected our plans at all because we're an early stage exploration company, and we're operating in an area that I think is very appropriate for mineral exploration in that it is far removed from any communities, any local ejido. There's really no agricultural competition for water, for example. So when we go to the environmental authorities to file our drilling exploration permits, which are similar to what you do anywhere else in the world, you apply for disturbance, drill hole locations, etc. We've actually, even since the laws have changed in Mexico, we've received the permits. I'd say last year faster than we expected. We got them 6 weeks after filing, which is, compared to Canada, that's pretty darn good. So, that's what I'll say in terms of direct impact. And I can say that because we're exploring, we're not yet considering development. And so I can't, obviously speak directly to any experience with challenges that permitting challenges that others might have that are further along. But to answer the first part of your question, so obviously, we can't ignore the headlines and some of the hostility towards the industry that you're seeing in the country now. But I'll just say this: so it is an election year. It as you said, this is political. This is this is something that's a hot topic in a country that has a lot of mining activity, that has a political fight for. It's a 1 in 6 year election, right, coming up in June. So there's a lot of sort of posturing around this topic that gets into the headlines. There's the constitutional amendment for banning open pit mining, things like that you're seeing. But the reality on the ground is this: it's a very important industry for Mexico, and the Northern Miner had an article out last week specifically addressing this, where the Supreme Court of Mexico is about to rule on the constitutionality of the mining law reforms that were passed last year. And again, all I can really do is quote from the article, but the article suggests that it is likely to be overturned. So I think that would be very positive for us. And, we'll see how the election shakes out. But I think as with many kind of political things, the the reality is oftentimes different than what's campaigned on. And so I think the worst of the sentiment is hopefully baked in, and potentially we can flip to just seeing some upside here in terms of the space as some of the unknowns become known over the next few quarters.
Great. And a couple of questions here that are related. One is, have you had any conversations with majors or producers? Are they paying attention? And hand in hand with that, obviously, you do have a shareholder in Alamos. Do they play an active role, or do they come in as an investor and they're primarily a passive shareholder?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have had a conversation with them, and yeah, they're very helpful. So they have a very large operation about 40 kilometers to our west, and we've had the opportunity to host their exploration team on our property. Last year, we did a couple of days with them, both in our core facility and on the property, in getting good advice and some good knowledge from them. So there is an active component there in terms of helping us, guide our strategy. And then, as it relates to other companies, typically in this industry, you sign, the non-disclosure goes both ways. So I can't really comment anything on that, whether we are or not. So yeah, sorry, it's not a great answer, but that's the truth.
Sure. Well, I guess one final closing answer. You did have a question. You did have a slide on this at the end, but just to review, what are some key milestones or news items that we might expect to have from Aztec over the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, so look, we're super undervalued on our chart compared to our peers, and in one sense, it's to be expected coming out of this doldrums for sentiment, particularly for the juniors in our space. So one of the catalysts I hope that we benefit from is simply just a re-rating back to where we were off of our previous results and getting into a better market. How do we support that with news? What are we doing to advance the properties? We have volumes of data now from 6 drill programs, 3 at each property, that are in real time going into the models. We have 2 geologists working full time on this right now, working up our next round of drill targets, and that is now hitting the ground at Tombstone with a mobilization of crews down there to go pit map, sample, and work up some of these expansion targets to the west side. So I would expect that over the next 6 to 8 to 12 weeks, we're going to have several announcements of new information highlighting how we think we can expand on the discoveries that we've made, particularly at Tombstone in the near future. And we'll be making our case to the market. Risk reward, X amount of dollars for drilling for this potential expansion of what we've already found. And I think what we've seen in the preliminary look is quite interesting, particularly at Tombstone. So lots to look forward to.
Great. Well, I'd like to again thank Simon Dykowski for presenting the Aztec story today, and thank you everyone on the line for tuning in and for your questions and attention. With the markets picking up here for precious metals and copper, we wish you happy investing.